except his trip to AirVenture was only 750 miles. Now, he's in the Air Force Academy living the dream.
The best times for fishing, 6:15 a.m. to 8:15 a.m. and 6:28 to 8:28. Good times.
You could bank to the left a little bit, yes.
The rain's getting really loud. Can you guys hear me well? Everybody in the back? Okay. So, good afternoon. My name is Alina Scott, and for me, the past 12 months have been like a dream, and asking myself, did that really happen? I'm 15 years old, and I'm going to 10th grade at Wando High School in Mount Pleasant, and I'd like to express my gratitude to AirVenture for inviting me here to share my story. And I'd also like to say thanks to everybody who's helped me pave the way, and for my brother, who did the same thing I did 5 years ago, and thus laid out the path for me.
My name is William Scott. I'm here at Oshkosh 2019 with my son Henry, who flew his Aerolite 103 from Virginia to Oshkosh in 32 hops.
So, my brother Henry did everything I did first, except his trip to AirVenture was only 750 miles. Now, he's in the Air Force Academy living the dream. And he gets to play games and go swimming every day. We're all very proud of him, and this is a picture of him in a glider, and he's currently training to become a glider pilot instructor while he's in college. Today I'd like to briefly cover the event that led me here, then I'd like to make a few observations, and then finally I'd be happy to answer any questions any of you may have. So my whole life I've grown up in an aviation family. My dad's a pilot, my brother's a pilot, and hopefully when I become 17 I can also become a pilot myself. And I'm used to the idea of flying in an aircraft that don't always run very well. For example, this is my dad's Commander 520 before it was in tip-top shape like it is now. Constantly something that had to be worked on. So my brother Henry, he was the guinea pig, and he started flying when he was 11, and this is his paragliding journey. In 2019, he flew to AirVenture the same way I did from Virginia, and I was part of his big group. My dad decided that if I wanted to learn to fly, I had to learn how to fly a powered paraglider first before flying a fixed-wing airplane. And how things went there would determine if I got to move on to fixed-wing flying or not. So in 2021 is when I started taking my powered paragliding lessons. This was at home at a local park, no certified instructor, just kind of trying to understand how to work a wing. I wasn't strong enough to carry the motor and run fast enough because a weak little 7th grader or 6th grader probably couldn't carry 40 pounds on their back at once. I was worried my dad would be disappointed in me, and he said that he was also hoping I'd be able to fly, but I would try again next year when I was stronger. So in 2022, my dad and I went to Quincy, Illinois, where we tried again, and we went to a flight school called Fly PPG, where 2 female pilots helped me learn how to fly. The motor was really heavy, but I pushed through. Many times I didn't think I would be able to do it. Can you guys still hear me fine? Okay, good. My experience the previous summer was in the back of my mind. I was still thinking, what if I can't fly? What if I can't pass this hard step and I won't be able to fly fixed wing? And my dad said to me, having trouble doing something is one thing, worrying about it is another, and worrying about it is making more problems for myself. So the 2 females that trained me was Teresa and Madeline, which Madeline was someone, I believe when I was doing it, she was about 15 as well, and she had also learned how to fly powered paraglider when she was, I think, 12. And after a lot of struggling and tears, I was finally able to do it, and flying all by myself was amazing, and my dad tells me I'll always remember my first solo. So this was right after my first solo.
Yeah, big smile.
Oh, man.
Come on, work it now. You did awesome. Got your first try, you're on your feet. Well, I kind of handled it, but you caught yourself. You got the feet going again?
Here I go.
So the airplane I fly now is an Aerolite 103, an ultralight aircraft. It has aluminum tube structure with sailcloth covering the wings, and is powered by a 440cc snowmobile engine. And it has conventional controls and flaps, and is currently costs around $21,000 for the kit and $25,000 fully built and ready to fly. So learning how to fly an ultralight, because there's only one seat, took several different types of steps. It was a bunch of baby steps that kind of led up to flying independently and flying the way I do in the air show in the mornings and evenings. One day while I was driving, my dad said, "I'll help you in any way I can, but I can't do it for you. When you're there, I can't help you if something goes wrong, and it'll always be up to you to fix those problems that happen while you're up there, like turbulence, if it gets super windy, gusty, engine outs, all of those kind of sudden failures. So you need to want to do this more than I want you to do this. You have to be pulling the curtains and asking me to go practice every time the weather permits. And you need to be able to make the decisions up there, and you're going to be the pilot in command. So, in other words, being a pilot takes a lot of responsibility. It's not like riding your bike where you can fall a few times and scrape your knees. After I had that talk with my dad, I changed gears. So since it was up to me, just up to me in the aircraft, I needed to learn each skill in order. I had to clearly demonstrate my ability in order to move on to the next phase. Step one isn't all that exciting. It's learning what the controls do, how to start the engine, how to shut down the engine, how to get out if there's an emergency. Step two is driving around on the ground using the wheels to control the direction, like driving a big tricycle. And step three, which you just saw, is the wheelie. After gradually adding power and holding the controls back, the nose wheel starts to come up off the ground. Step four, takeoff and landing. After increasing the power bit by bit, the main wheels start to come off the ground, and once the main landing gear comes off the ground, I lower the nose and maintain an altitude of about 1 foot. So when I reach the landing area, I set the power to idle and let the airplane settle back onto the runway. So sometimes I still use this maneuver so I can, I guess, kind of taxi glide, usually back at my airport over here. So step five, after reaching a medium altitude about 7 feet or so, I pull back on the power and establish level flight. So slowly inching up there. One thing that this helped me with is learning how to fly at different altitudes. Some people, when they learn how to fly, will have this fear of flying closer to the ground or having low flybys. So this is what helped me learn how to fly lower and come in low and for lower approaches and really feel comfortable when flying my airplane. Step five, approach. After reaching an altitude about 15 feet, so a little bit, just more and more, I reduce the power and the pitch of the nose down to maintain airspeed. So it's like take off, cruise, and land. It took me around 2 months to reach this point in my training, and I had accumulated about 60 takeoff and landings. So I was stuck in step 6 for a few months before I was ready to start flying. Phase 2 is air work. It's everything you need to learn to fly in the air. So there's the steps that you need to know to get up into the air, but once you're in the air, what do you do? My dad didn't think he could teach me all of those emergency procedures like stalls, spins, or an engine out over the radio. So I practiced those in a Cessna 150, and we didn't get any video of that. So next was turns, climbs, descents, and approach. In other words, go fly around. I was nervous at first and was very, very careful to do everything exactly how I was taught, but I managed. And I sing a lot when I fly. Phase 3, I had to learn the travel part of flying. I had to learn where to go, how to use my GPS in the air, and how to communicate with other pilots in the air, and what to do when I got to the other airport. So a long list of things that come with flying. I learned how to use my GPS to find my location, and I had several backups. So I had my phone tucked under my leg because in an open cockpit, you can't just lay something on the ground or it'll fall. So I had to learn how to be comfortable calling my dad, and then if that didn't work, how to use my Garmin flight watch, and if that didn't work, how to contact air traffic control with the radio I had. And I learned what to do if my radio stopped working, how to pick a landing spot if my engine stopped running. So sometimes when you're flying in an ultralight, it can be one of those things where you're flying in a straight line and you're going over this big area of water, but it may be safer to go around the water instead in case your engine decides to quit on you. And I learned how to choose an alternate airport, and if that became necessary, I learned how. So the GPS I have has on like many modern GPSs now. There's a direct button where you can type in everything, and then there's also a nearest button that shows you all of the near airports that you have. So that's what I learned how to use in those emergency situations. I learned airspace rules, how to communicate with other airplanes, and how to choose a runway to land on and enter the pattern. So who here's a pilot? So all of you know listening to the weather, right, like 10 miles out or something like that before you come to the airport. You're listening to the wind, or what direction it's coming from, and that's how I had to learn what runway to choose to land on. So I wrote notes for each airport on note cards because when I made my trip to Oshkosh for the first time, I had just soloed in the aircraft like a few weeks before my trip. So I would put little pictures of the airport, where I was coming from. I would label each side of it. If it was left traffic, right traffic. Then I would put things like the weather frequency, what frequency I needed to talk to other people, and then sometimes I would put a little script on the back just a reminder. And then I put these, this was my dad's idea, to put them in a little quarterback sleeve on my arm so I could always have them there. So when you have a closed cockpit, you can't carry a bunch of pieces of paper with you, so you always had to condense what you wanted to have with you. So I also had notes for alternate airports because some airports were at least like an hour far apart from each other, and that takes up like half of my fuel tank. So in case something happens, I'd have enough fuel to either go back to my original airport or to an airport that was kind of along the way. My first cross country was from Ravens Run to Mount Pleasant. And the thought was that if you can do a 4-mile flight, then you can do a 40-mile flight. All that was left to do was to link 42 airports together with short flights, and I'd be in Oshkosh. This was also my first time ever landing on a paved runway, so I had to learn what happens when my wheels would wobble on the pavement. I was also responsible for doing pre-flights, nut and bolt checks, and make sure I had the right information cards in my quarterback sleeve. I found that if something, if I found something that didn't look right, like maybe a wobbly tube or a bolt that needed to be tightened, I would tell my dad, and he was kind of like my hicker. He's like fixing everything. This doesn't look right. So my dad did everything else, including double checking all my work and making sure I had fuel. And that's a list of all the airports I went to. And I kept a diary for my adventure. It was just kind of like a little debrief of what happened every day. They got very specific in some points. But when I first started my journey, day one, we woke up at 5 or 6 in the morning to start my cross-country trip in my Aerolite, Ultralight 103. According to my dad, his words, I flew like a monster, and I flew 233 miles from Ravens Run to Gainesville, Georgia. I met a guy at St. George Airport who tried to buy my airplane for me, which was one of those moments where it's like, well, where else do you want me to go? You want me to sleep here? I also came close to a developing thunderstorm, and I had to navigate my way around it while the thunderstorm was going about the same speed I was flying. Day 2, we woke up even earlier at 4:30 in the morning, and the weather was no bueno. So the first flight was over water. In the time lapse, in the beginning, there was a little water area, sunset in the back, or sun rising in the background. And I would say that those flights in the morning were probably my favorite flights, because it's one of those things where you're like, I don't think anybody else my age has ever seen this same way I have. We got 2 flights in before it was way too windy for my aircraft, and then we got ice cream and sat around for the rest of the day. So that was a fun thing. On day 3, we also woke up at 4:30 and we started flying again. I went over a lot of mountains, and I had to kind of trail next to the mountain until I found a low spot where I could find my way through the mountains, because in ultralights, most of them don't have a fancy little artificial horizon and are not IFR rated. So if you go to the clouds, you'll lose your orientation real quickly. So I always tried to stay below the clouds as much as I could. It added like 20 minutes to my flight when trying to fly next to those mountains. For me, it was no biggie. For my dad, terrifying. And I flew 8 flights in total that day. I had to wait 40 minutes for my dad, on average, sometimes 20 minutes, sometimes more than 40 minutes, because my path was a straight line from the previous airport to the next airport, but his was like this squiggly little up and down mountains, down into the ocean. I don't know. It was like a crazy journey that he had to go through to get to each airport, especially lugging a trailer in the back. And we stopped at Grayson County that day, and the guy who worked there was nice and offered us popsicles, and we took a picture. He took a picture of us with me and my dad to show his friends. So he had a Young Eagles kind of meetup every week, where he would, or I guess, kind of gather all the kids who really wanted to learn how to fly or interested, and he would, I guess, talk about flying, and then I became a kind of guest, and they showed a picture of me at one of them. On day 4, we woke up at 3:30. I did not want to wake up. I walked out of the hotel like a zombie. I don't think I was awake at all, and I didn't have any breakfast. But to my someone heard my call. It started pouring rain, so we ended up going to the Huddle House for breakfast, and I got to actually wake up from my sleep. In Huntingburg, I met a group of people who offered me a spot in their hangar while I waited for my dad. And this was one of these moments where, right now, there's a bunch of people who know me. They've seen videos of me and stuff like that. They've seen me flying. And in Huntingburg, that was kind of like my first experience of people going, oh, look, a little tiny airplane. Is that a 14-year-old flying that? And they cleared out a hangar and put my airplane in it. They started getting plexiglass cleaner and they started wiping my windshield for me, which I was like, what's happening? What's going on? And that was my first impression of people who are from Illinois, other than the people who taught me how to fly powered paragliders. So I assumed, well, maybe they're just really nice. So then later I got a call from my dad. His car broke down, so the lovely picture of the U-Haul, we had to switch it out like 500 times before we got to Oshkosh, but that was our new car. I know it's so cool. And I felt famous at the second airport that we went to with the plexiglass and the free hangar. And one of the people who were there said that they were helping me because I was living the dream. And I hope that my experience inspires anybody who's not a pilot. Do you guys all want to be pilots? I hope so. So day 5, thankfully we woke up an hour later, so 4:30, and we got some more flying in. And I flew to Solomon County, and my dad got me a sandwich and coffee, which is what I needed when I was tired. We flew to Danville, Vermilion, until the visibility was so low that I was flying 400 feet above the ground. Now, flying here at Oshkosh, I fly 300 feet above the ground, but for someone who was really new to flying and also flying around mountains that were going up and down, I wasn't yet prepared to start, like, have you guys seen that Planes movie where they're like swerving and everything? I didn't think I was that good. So I found a nearby airport and it was Sky King, and I remember I had quite an awkward experience there because it didn't seem like they liked ultralights because they glared at me for like 10 minutes before they came over to say hi. And then I left, then after they said hi, they left, and I was waiting impatiently for my dad to get there, which, again, I waited 40 minutes in the corner of the ramp, really, I don't know. So, day 6, we woke up at the usual time to start off our last flying day to Oshkosh. So, thankfully, all of these hours and hours of flying each day, flying until I couldn't fly, was what made me get there so quickly with only 5 knots of speed and occasionally a little bit more. When we flew out of DeKalb, my engine sounded a little funky, so I called my dad in the air, and he told me it sounded fine to him, and I shouldn't worry about it. Okay. So I continued making my way to Oshkosh. I think this one was a 30-minute flight, and I was quite nervous because I think my airplane might blow up on me in a second, but it's okay. So then an even more unsettling noise happened. I had a problem at first that people couldn't hear me over the radio because of my engine and the open cockpit and all the noise and wind from around kind of blocked what I was saying. So what I would do is I would cut the power a little bit, say what I needed to say super quickly, and then put the power back in. And in one of those moments when I was talking to the tower, I think I was coming in for downwind or something, all of a sudden, when I'm putting power back in, I have this really high-pitched, loud noise come up. My muffler broke, and I didn't even know it until I came onto the ground. So that thought of my airplane exploding was even louder in my head. I was terrified. I went on the wrong side of the runway. I think instead of going in for I think it's right downwind, I came in for a left downwind. There's a DC-3 coming in on the other side. They flew under me and they landed underneath me, and then I landed behind them. A lot of things were happening at once. And then when I was about 10 miles out is when my exhaust tube had broken when I was talking to the tower. So I was instructed to land right downwind, but I landed left downwind. So, and then I got off the runway as quickly as I could to let other planes go by. And that runway strip is so long that I was on the edge of taking off the whole way down that runway as I was trying to get all the way to Papa 4 at the taxiway over here. And then I ended up coming off at the wrong taxiway because I was trying to get off the taxiway so quickly. I think I exited Papa 3 instead. And the flight marshal or ground was looking for me. They was like, where's this airplane? Where are they? And then they look over and they see I'm at the wrong taxi exit. And then a big group of people surrounded me after I got off there. I thought I was in trouble. They were congratulating me, but because I thought I was in trouble, I didn't take the congratulations of, ooh, you flew 1,000 miles. I thought, I don't know, it was just one of those moments where like, oh, my muffler broke, my engine is about to blow up behind me, there's people here. I landed behind a DC-3, it flew underneath me. Yeah, so I had just finished a trip under 1,000 miles, and it's not a perfectly straight line because airports are not in a straight line, and also because I had to avoid the Appalachian Mountains. I did not have mountain training, and I did not want to get mountain training, so. AirVenture is one of the biggest air shows in the world, and so far, I hope all of you are enjoying it because I've been to AirVenture every year of my life, other than COVID, because COVID decided to ruin my streak. I used to fly there with my dad in his Mooney or Commander, and it was like one of those family vacations that everything else was planned around it because you can't say no to Oshkosh. And this year, or last year, 2023, is when I flew there myself. At Oshkosh, this was my last year at Oshkosh. Each day I woke up at about around 5:30. It's kind of like repeating itself while I'm here. And we get breakfast, probably at like the Hangar Cafe or Talpine Cafe. And then we go to the briefings that are in this room at 7:30, and we learn about the rules and where we're supposed to fly. The flight sessions happened from around 9 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. last year. Now I think it's 9:30 to, I don't remember. I just know I go fly around for a few hours and then come back. And then the evening, it used to be at 6:30 to 7:30, and it's the same this year. And last year, there were a lot of people, and it's the same pattern, so that's like an example of what the pattern looks up in the air. When I first saw that pattern, I was like, that is such a complicated pattern. It's not just a little rectangle like I'm used to doing. So it's like this weird looking polygon, and you go around all these little turns and corners and everything. And I was worried that I wouldn't be able to fly it properly. And it's like, what if I get lost? What if I fly to a different state on accident? And I flew it once, and I was like, oh, this is really easy. I later found out that last year there were 677,000 people that attended AirVenture, and about a fourth of them came to go see me flying.
The new wings today won't bump down. They fly like a wing's supposed to fly. Miss Alina's butter smooth landing once again. Landing the Aerolite 103 like a seasoned professional.
So for all I know, I hope they're saying good things about me when I'm flying, but that's just one of the examples, or kind of the only example I've heard myself, because usually I have either really loud static in my headphones or music blasting in my headphones, because up in the air I can't hear it unless my phone's at full volume. So when I get on the ground, I can't hear anything other than my ears ringing because I have some like really upbeat music playing. So according to my dad and then a few other spectators, they say good things about me. For all I know, they could be saying bad things about me and they're just lying to me in my face. So each morning and sometimes in the evening, I was a less consistent flyer than I am this year. I flew, and after each flight, there was always someone who wanted to talk to me. And Friday evening, I think this year too, was a awards banquet, and I was awarded Pilot of the Year, even though they corrected my flying every flight session. You're flying too high, you're flying too low. You're taking up too much runway. I met many interesting people at the air show, and for example, this is Mike, and he's been to AirVenture for the last 50 years. I think he just gave a presentation earlier today, and he is now, he's like our oldest member here, and he has like kept on like the legacy, and he flies a Quicksilver, and he's been here for so long that Oshkosh decided to put a silhouette of him flying his airplane on their 50-year anniversary beer can. And now he goes around passing those out to people. So if you have one, you're lucky. And this was kind of one of those pictures. Youngest flyer next to the most experienced flyer.
I like that.
So after my last flight of the week, I went to Olive Garden, which is kind of like our staple place to go for every single meal of the day. Because if I had the option, Oshkosh food is great, but I know that if I come back home, I'm going to step on the scale and I'm going to be maybe twice my weight that before I came to Oshkosh. So we came back to start putting away the airplane, and it was a pain in the butt because I have these bigger wheels. In South Carolina, we had this idea that I could go land on islands in the middle of the nowhere, and I would need bigger wheels to land on the sand, which has never happened, but bigger wheels are fun. So apparently while we were gone, and there was a mid-air rotary craft collision, and a few of you may know about that, but unfortunately 2 people didn't make it, and many others were injured. After we put away the airplane, we ate s'mores, and we watched the air show. S'mores happen more than once. My name is Alina. I'm 14 years old and I flew my ultralight aeroplane to AirVenture this year. I've been flying with my dad since I was little. A few years ago, he figured I was ready to give it a try for myself. At first it didn't work out, but a year later it did. And then this year I learned how to fly my Aerolite 103. The process was slow and involved a lot of driving around. But then I started to fly. It was slow at first, but then higher. And after a few months, I just kept on going. I learned how to navigate, and I learned how to talk to other airplanes. AirVenture is one of the biggest air shows in the world. I have been going to AirVenture almost every year of my life. This was the first year I flew by myself. The journey was 1,000 miles long. It took me 6 days to complete. I flew across South Carolina's low country to the hills of Georgia. I flew over the mountains of Tennessee and Kentucky, and the farms of Illinois and Wisconsin. And when I got there, I got to fly with other ultralight pilots. It was an amazing experience. I'd like to go to the Air Force Academy someday. Maybe I can fly something fast like a fighter, or big like a gunship. This wouldn't have been possible with a lot of help and support from a lot of people. People like Ted Wilson, who gave my dad the time he needed to train me and make sure I had gas and that my plane stayed together. People like Lee from Project First Flight, who welded my broken muffler and made it possible for me to fly during this show. People like John and his friends at Huntingburg Airport who helped us get back to flying after my dad's car broke down. And my mom who trusted that I could do it even though she couldn't watch. And all those who showed me a goodwill. Thank you. Still stuck with me for another hour.
Yeah,
So,
yay.
on my trip to Sun and Fun, who here's been to Sun and Fun? Because I know how. I've only been there twice. My trip was a lot shorter because I live in South Carolina, and South Carolina and Florida, they're right next to each other. On day one, this trip took 4 days, and my trip was delayed a few days because I was sick, which ate up most of my spring break. laying down and doing absolutely nothing, which is not my thing. Being sort of sick mixed with flying in the cold wind, because this was still like the early spring kind of coming out of the winter. It was not a nice combination, and I had to fly with wind in my face, cold everything, shivering, enduring it for a full hour, or I wouldn't go to Sun and Fun. So I didn't make it that far because we got started late in the day and it got too windy for me to continue. So that's a really good, beautiful video of me bundled up in every layer possible, but still being cold. Day 2, we woke up at 5 a.m. I kind of had to get back into the gist of waking up in the early hours of the day before the sun even it was dark outside, and my brain was saying, don't wake up, you still need to sleep. But my dad was waking up, Alina, wake up, we have to go flying. And I figured I should dress warm, so this day was when I had to kind of bundle up and endure the cold weather, and it was painfully cold up there. Like, I couldn't feel my fingertips, I couldn't feel a lot of parts of my body, but thankfully each of the flights were getting warmer and warmer. I remember one of the airports, after that hour of enduring, I was looking at, okay, 17 minutes left, 16 minutes left, 15 minutes left. And then when I saw the runway, I was like, yes, the ground, it's there. I get to go inside and feel my fingers again. So I had hot chocolate, and it was going from being an icicle to being warm, so there was kind of like, there was some pain in it, but it was okay because I wanted to keep my fingers. So the last airport we landed at that day was a private airport and had a 10-foot chain link fence topped with barbed wire around it. So there was me sitting next to my airplane trying to figure out how to get into the private FBO. It's like, why is this thing locked? Isn't this for other people? And then my dad trying to figure out how to get either under or over the fence so I can go sleep somewhere and not at the ramp. And it was really tricky getting in and out of the hotel until someone saw my dad's truck light in the distance and came over to see if someone was trying to hijack the airport. So at 5 a.m. again, unfortunately, we woke up and we made arrangements with the airport manager to get back into the private airport and leave early in the morning. And it was I only did one flight to Marion County Airport. So on day 4, we woke up early. I think you can see a trend. It's just constantly battling to wake up early in the morning and not wanting to wake up. Today was the day we planned on arriving at Sun and Fun at Lakeland Airport, and it was tricky because we had to review the rules called NOTAMs. And they have a famous phrase, it's not Oshkosh. It's not Oshkosh. So you would always, it was like, well, at Oshkosh we do it, it's not Oshkosh. So I had to kind of rewire my brain to like a new set of rules, and now I'm back here, so I had to like again rewire my brain back to the right way. And my dad added a few waypoints into my GPS so I could approach the airport from the south instead of and go into their pattern right instead of cutting right in the middle and messing up their flying. I met a girl my age. Her name is Kylie, and she is a paraglider pilot. So that's just even more proof that people who are below the age of 16 and 17 can definitely get their flying experience in.
Something you don't see every day here in aviation. A 14-year-old soloed her ultralight into Sun and Fun yesterday. She landed at Paradise City, and our own Nick Iannati caught up with the young aviator.
This is Nicholas Iannati with Sun and Fun Aerospace Expo TV. We're here at Paradise City waiting for Alina Scott, a 14-year-old who was soloed all the way from South Carolina here to Sun and Fun. Let's go talk to her. Okay, so we're here with Alina Scott. Alina just flew in from South Carolina, correct?
Yes, sir.
Alina, welcome to Sun and Fun. What an amazing story. You're only 14 years old. Is that? How long have you been flying?
I've been flying since March of last year.
Okay, excellent. Tell us a little bit about your aircraft as well.
This is an Aerolite 103. It has a Kawasaki 440 for an engine, and it's about 8 years old now.
Okay, 8 years old.
6.
So tell us a little bit about your flight. I understand there was a series of flights to get here. Why don't you tell us about that?
So I believe I did about 9 flights to get to Sun and Fun, and then I did, I think, 7 flights first, and then I drove over back to Marion County and did my last flight to Zephyr Hills, and then made a flight over to here.
Okay, and what kind of license do you currently hold right now?
None.
Okay, sounds good. What would you say to any other teenagers that are sitting at home watching this and they're thinking about flying in or even just starting to fly? What would you tell them?
It's definitely a really cool experience to be able to fly, but first, if you want to fly, you have to want to learn to fly. It's not like riding your bicycle where you can mess up a few times before you get it. It's a process that you have to really want to do.
Yeah, were you nervous flying in here at all?
No, not really. Mainly because of my flight to Oshkosh, I've already had a lot of experience, so just going from airport to airport.
Sure. What would you say was the most challenging part of getting here?
There's not many obstacles. It was a pretty calm flight, but there was a storm that came in, so we had to hightail it over here to make sure the airplane was tied down.
Folks, you're here with Alina Scott. She is living proof. You're never too old or too young to fly into Sun and Fun. This is Nicholas Eni with Sun and Fun Aerospace Expo team.
I mean, wow.
That is amazing. Absolutely
Congratulations
amazing.
to her. So happy to have her here as well, hopefully, as she is.
She is way more accomplished than I am at this point, so.
Good for her. She's going to do some big things.
Day 1 of Sun and Fun. Before I could fly, I had to go to the same pilot briefings, and we met a lot of other pilots. Each day there's a morning session and evening session, same as here at Oshkosh, and we practiced landing and taking off the flaps so that I could pinpoint my touchdown. There's a lot less curves, more time to kind of come into the runway straight rather than doing some like aerobatic maneuver to get in front of the runway to land. Their displaced threshold, or where they wanted you to land, was a lot longer. Probably it felt like to me that it was like maybe half the runway, and they wanted me to land in the middle of the runway.
And the weather is changing.
So since AirVenture and Sun and Fun, I've continued to fly as often as I can, and I can now fly or resume more flying ever since school ended, and now I'm here in Oshkosh. So I've made a lot of friends because of my flying, and I feel like I've seen things that I don't think many other people my age have seen. So for all the other people, all the young people here, if you want to fly, you should do it because you'll get to brag and say, like, I've seen better sunsets than you have. So I felt more confident, more independent, and I've gotten a lot of experience when it comes to, like, there's something that comes with it. It's a hard to explain thing, but once you start flying, there's like this switch in your head, and you're like, I need to focus more, and then once you have kind of gotten past that part, it feels like there's wings on your back. So for all the people, everybody, it looks like most of the people here know how to drive. And there is a moment where you were driving, your hands were tense, your arms were straight, you were like doing robotic maneuvers. The roundabouts were scaring me really bad. I'm going through that process right now myself, so it's like starting over again. But it's after a while, you can drive the car or any motorcyclists, or you can operate the machine as if it is part of you, which is kind of the goal in the end. And some observations I've had, being a pilot, you must first want to become a pilot. There's that process where you go, oh my gosh, those jets are really cool, I want to fly. I want to fly a jet. But a lot of people overlook the process of getting in that jet airplane. So, and then with all of that, it's rewarding. If you're having trouble, that's one thing. Worrying about is another. Don't make more problems for yourself. And when you're in the flying process, when you're learning, or I got all the help that I needed now, but soon it'll be up to me, so someday I can help others. And hopefully, as I said earlier, hopefully I've inspired several people to fly, pursue something, not necessarily flying if that's not your thing. And again, I'm really grateful for the invitation to speak today. I thank you all for coming, and if any of you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I also want to thank my dad for the videos. He's my editor. I don't have to pay him. And he put together all of those, and he's been with me the most throughout my whole entire journey. And he's been there to make sure that my airplane doesn't blow up like I thought it would. And but yeah, if you guys have any questions, I would love to answer any of them. So the way I did it is my dad, because he has all the knowledge with using SkyVector and all those planning websites, he planned out this course for me, and then it was my job to do as much flying as I could where the weather let me. So as I said, on some days, there was days where I could only do a single flight or 2 flights, and you have to make those decisions. You can't, going out and flying when it's not safe is one of those not smart decisions. So some days you can only fly for 2 days, and other days you can fly, or some days you can fly 2 flights, and then some days you can fly 8 flights and get, like on my first flight, or first day, I flew from South Carolina all the way to like the tip of Georgia because I just kept flying. I just kept, anytime all my dad did, I didn't dilly-dally. He pulled up, put more gas in my tank, and I went. And that's kind of the part of cross country. You don't want to waste any time while you're trying to get from point A to point B. So pretty much to sum it up, I flew as much as I could, or as much as it was to be safe, and then my dad was the one who made that the little trail for me.
How many hours do you have now?
I have over 110 hours. That's what my GPS says. I don't count.
Looking at your license.
right now I haven't started like getting into the reading and everything, but that is my goal once I do turn 16. Fortunately, my dad's a CFI, so he can help me through the first soloing part, and he can help me. My brother's gone through it, so I have several people who can help me with it. So there's several ultralights that do need a license because of how heavy they are. But the one I fly is light enough and also has a fixed amount of gallons. So I have 5 gallons in my fuel tank, and then it's under a certain amount of weight, so that if I do end up crashing, it's not gonna cause some big problems for the people on the ground who had no say in me crashing onto their house or something. So I also chose it because my dad chose it because it's one of the airplanes that it has all the kind of conventional instruments that a Cessna would have. If you put my airplane next to a Cessna, you'll see it has a yoke. It has throttle control I've seen some that have knobs for throttle control, which confuses me. But there's throttle control. Mine also has flaps in the back, so there's like a little switch that I pull forward or backwards to make the flaps go up and down. And there's many ultralights that don't have flaps and those type of things. So it was the closest airplane that was similar to a Cessna or a fixed wing airplane that would really help me prepare and get comfortable flying before I get my pilot's license. So when I started flying the fixed wing or the powered paraglider, this one. So I was 14 when I started flying them. I started March of 2023. How often do I fly? So I fly anytime. Now that I have the experience, I don't like going to fly when it's not fun to fly, because now that I have that, the ability to kind of fly in whatever weather I want to fly in, I kind of choose those days or those mornings and evenings that are, I guess I'll enjoy flying more. So flying next to the beach and flying kind of low in the water, I'll fly on days when it's not overly crazy and I'm not fighting the airplane and stuff like that.
So along that line, what other activities are involved in work you see next doing something amazing?
So right now I'm pursuing motorcycles. So I just started dirt bikes, and I want to see if I can also get into some street biking, not like crazy 1000cc bikes, but mainly like small ones that can go on the highway, just do exactly what they're meant to do, go from one point to another, but just do it in a little bit more of a fun fashion. So I'm also involved in like other programs such as like Civil Air Patrol, and you see some of them out on the flight line in the camo uniforms, and then also my school has an ROTC program. Any other questions? Okay, again, thank you guys so much for listening and listening to my story, sitting, waiting, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your Oshkosh, and I hope you guys have been inspired or I hope I have moved you in some way to pursue great things. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't. And as always, I appreciate your comments. Thank you for watching. Until next time, take care.